The problem with working with an inanimate object with no sentience is sometimes they don't always play along. But enough about the NXT 2.0 roster. We are here today to talk about weapons. Look, there has been a plethora of plunder brawls already in 2022. We're only in May, of course. And whilst we may complain that some companies may well overdo it, we've got to admit, there's not many things that can top the thrill of a ladder match, the joy of seeing someone smashed over the back with a chair, or the orgasmic pleasure of watching your favourite wrestler get put through a table and it exploding into a million pieces. These spots always work. Except for when they don't. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 weapon fails that totally ruined wrestling matches. Number 10, the Hardys flop on AEW Dynamite. The idea was simple and yet still too ambitious from Tony Khan. When he signed Jeff Hardy to AEW, he decided to present the Hardys as this nostalgia act running through all the hits. And it started well with a really enjoyable match against Private Party. It seemed like they were on the path to an inevitable feud with the Young Bucks. But before that, they faced the Butcher and the Blade in a tables match on Dynamite, and the bloody wheels fell off. Look, we know what happens in a tables match. This was some sort of weird tables elimination match. But what happened was Butcher and the Blade chucked Jeff Hardy off the top onto a table, and the leg gave way. That was it. There was no satisfying crunch, but because he'd been put through a table, technically, it counted and he was eliminated, and all the fans, when that was a bit of a wet fart, really, wasn't it? Honestly, I've seen more satisfying table spots when that big bald bastard Big Show stepped through against Cody Rhodes. Number 9, the horrific AEW discourse begins. Cody versus Darby Allin at Fyter Fest 2019 was a really good match, but you don't remember that, do you? Mainly because it feels like there's been about 10 years since that happened with all that's happened in between, but also because the only thing that anyone remembers from that match was the post-match where Shawn Spears showed up and bonked Cody Rhodes right in the head with a chair. Now, of course, chair shots to the head are a stupid idea, but somewhat in AEW's defense, they did try to counteract that. They sort of gimmicked the chair so it was more baking tray than solid steel chair, but even so, it then bent in the back of the chair, twatted Cody in the back of the head. It was awful, but the main reason this was just dreadful is it gave all that ammunition to those trolls who were just waiting to pile on AEW, and they started shouting about CTE, and, well, we can see where we've gone from there. It did give birth to the chairman, Shawn Spears, so it wasn't all bad news. He's doing great stuff in AEW, well, at least at time of recording, because he hasn't had that steel cage match with Wardlow yet. Good luck to Shawn. But yeah, it was just a really bad idea, this. Chasing eyes or excitement or controversy, not a good call. Then again, I have seen worse chair shots. Speaking of which, number 8, Lance Storm can't throw a chair. Oh, I really like Lance Storm, despite the fact that my first introduction to him as a wrestling fan was, I think, Stone Cold falling asleep on the ramp during one of his matches. But anyway, we're here to talk about weapon spots. There are 2 wrong ways to swing a chair. Number 1, one end of the scale is as hard as you possibly can to cave the guy's skull in and just, well, look at the state of Glenn Jacobs nowadays for all you need to know about what happens if you do that too often. And then at the opposite end of the scale is poor Lance Storm, who barely connected in ECW of all places. It was barely legal 1997. He was facing Rob Van Dam, and Lance Storm's a good guy. He didn't want to give Rob Van Dam a really nasty headache. He wanted to work it relatively safely despite the arena that they were in. And so instead of, giving his ancestors a headache, he slightly moved Rob Van Dam's fringe to the side using a chair. The ECW fans weren't happy, and we all realised that Lance Storm is harsher when penning an obit than swinging a chair. Number 7, Kurt Angle is felled by an uncooperative table. The opposite to one of my many kinks, this. You see, I love it when a table doesn't break, when a wrestler hits a huge move on someone else onto the table and it just stays there. Don't get me wrong, love a wooden table exploding, but the announce table, that is a sturdy old bastard. And the opposite of this happened at SummerSlam at 2000, featuring Triple H and Kurt Angle. So Triple H is setting up to pedigree Kurt Angle after he's cleared off the Spanish announce table. As he goes to get that leap off the table to execute the pedigree, everything falls to pieces, both men collapse to the ground, and unfortunately, Kurt Angle suffers a concussion, which, interestingly, ironically, was actually called for in the match. The post-match was meant to have had Kurt Angle being knocked loopy, and that was going to advance the storyline post-match. It happened, just accidentally here, and the fans still went wild because it was WWF in the year 2000. I can only imagine how Vince reacted when someone told him that, because he knew what direction they wanted to go in post-match. Vince, Kurt is really hurt, like this is going to be really serious. We think he's got a concussion. Great news, pal! They're really going to buy it now. You heartless bastard. Number 6. Thunder Rosa inadvertently uses a table as a slide. Guys, this is wrestling. Botches happen. This ain't ballet, but sometimes if you have a botch in a match, you can even work it into it, like CM Punk, because he's mint. But when it happens in a plunder brawl, it just makes it look like you're crap at DIY. Take the recent match from Dynamite between Mercedes Martinez and Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa goes to set up a table at ringside, but it's been a bit stubborn, basically. The legs aren't going out properly, so she decides, you know what? When I go for the Death Valley driver and Mercedes Martinez reverses it into a suplex, if it's propped up against the apron, it'll be basically the same as if it was standing at ringside. Nope. What happened was the table was as stubborn at not breaking as it was at being set up, and the two wrestlers just slid down it, and all the shock and awe of such a maneuver was taken out of it. Whee! Number 5. The drama in Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns is literally handcuffed. Hey, we've all had problems with handcuffs, right, lads? In the dark early days of 2021 at the Royal Rumble, it was going to be Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens in a last man standing match. And if you're trying to remember it, yes, it was that one with the golf cart spot, slightly stolen from AEW, which was nice. Anyway, towards the end of the match, the story was meant to be that Kevin Owens realized that one of the only ways he could beat the tribal chief was to handcuff him against some scaffolding as they brawled all over the arena. And then Paul Heyman was going to scrabble in at the last minute and just undo Roman Reigns' hands from the handcuffs so he could break the count and then eventually go on to win, because of course it was Roman Reigns. But that didn't happen because something went wrong with the handcuffs. In the end, Paul Heyman pissed about unlocking with them for so long that the referee had to sort of just distract himself and kind of forget the count because Roman Reigns was going over. So probably Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, should have lost, which I'm sure is going to be fine for me on social media to say that. There's not going to be lots of avatars doing this, telling me to acknowledge him. Number 4. WWE, a tonal and near total disaster. A comedy plunder match can be great if you do it correctly. You got to remember what this needs to be used for. This isn't a grudge match. This isn't someone getting put through a pane of glass. It's just wacky bollocks. The other thing you need to remember is to actually gimmick the weapons, because it's not your bog standard tables and chairs. Wrestlers don't put each other through goddamn oak tables, do they? Think about this. I wish WWE had done that before a Symphony of Destruction match in 2020, where Braun Strowman slammed Shinsuke Nakamura off the announce tables into an actual grand piano. Like, it was barely gimmicked at best, and then Shinsuke had to sit there holding his head together for the rest of the match, basically. Like, you could have just made it out of plywood and painted it black. And no, I'm not expecting someone to come in and play a little tune before they smash each other up. I know it's got Elias in it. God, I bet Ezekiel's enjoying this list. But yeah, it's really easy to just gimmick stuff so that, I mean, you're not going to build, for example, a bloody brick wall, an actual brick wall for Roman Reigns to spear someone through, are you? Oh God, I've given WWE another idea. Number 3, the blind literally lead the blind in TNA. Alright, it's more of a prop than a weapon, but you've already got this far. You might as well stick around to see what number 1 is. Chris Harris and James Storm at Lockdown at 2007 had a blindfold match. A quite enjoyable one at that, despite the fact that when you put a bag on someone's head, it's there to serve kind of one purpose. So they can't see. So the one thing you really need that bag to do, stay on. And so whenever these two located each other, reaching around in the dark in this match and started swinging haymakers, the bags fell off and the referee had to stop the match to put them back on. It was literally the antithesis of total non-stop action. If you are wondering where the lapsed fans are, why I haven't flocked to AEW, it's because of crap like this in the noughties, basically. Number 2, AEW catalyses a rare good faith controversy. We all know the story of the boy who cried wolf, and it applies here. Look, if you are going to throw mud at everything AEW does, whether it's justified or not, when they actually do something worthy of criticism, something controversial, you're just going to get lost along with everything else, along with all those twats on Twitter. Look, the entire Matt Hardy, Sammy Guevara 2020 feud was just awful. It was just cursed, wasn't it? But it was crystallized at All Out. And it wasn't really a weapon fail, just a series of events that just really needed to be thought about more. The cherry picker that they were on was far too narrow for them to be able to execute the move that they were attempting. The table that was meant to break their fall onto the concrete was too close, and well, we all know what happened. They both came off this cherry picker. Matt Hardy smashed his head on the concrete and then inexplicably was allowed to finish the match despite turning a shade of, well, grape purple. Stupid, dumb, awful, harrowing to watch. Let's finish with something a little bit more fun, hey? Number 1, the Revolution dud. I mean, I remember being on the live stream reactions for this show, and when it all counted down and the explosion went off, we just sort of went, well, that just happened then. This is a moment that will live in infamy. It's a moment so abysmal, it goes into those categories alongside the likes of Hell in a Cell 2019, Royal Rumble 2015. I suppose the only thing that differentiates it is this isn't what was supposed to happen. This wasn't the plan, I assume. It followed the exploding barbed wire death match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, of course, which was really good. I mean, it's tainted completely, of course, but it was a great match. Maybe so good that people were a little bit too forgivable with the explosions that preceded that moment, of course. They were passable at best. And then obviously the post-match happened and, let's just luxuriate in a minute. So in comes all the guys and then they get Kenny Omega out of there. And then, oh my God, Jon Moxley's laid out in this ring that's going to explode. We're going to watch a man die on pay-per-view. Here comes Eddie Kingston. They used to be friends. They used to be the biggest enemies, but he got through everything and he can't watch his friend. He's going to dive on top of him to prevent him from dying from this horrific explosion. And then a children's 4th of July celebration sort of happened. And yeah, Tony Khan tried to explain it away. Kenny Omega had to shout 69 me don't commentate for it all. And I mean, in summary, they made, like I say, just this unforgettable moment. But more importantly, and I'm scared to say this about them on the internet, don't take this out of context, guys, but they made Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley, two guys who you should never make look like dicks, look like the biggest knobheads you've ever seen. And that is our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. You can also let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And you can find me on there at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.